Praveen, and I'm going to deliver a talk on IoT hardware platforms. As from the last 5 days, you are listening to the renowned experts from industries, research labs, and some of the from academics, and we come to know that the agriculture is one of the booming field in India and worldwide, where the IoT and some of the future technologies are changing the scenario. And we know that the hardware, which is the backbone of the IoT systems or the IoT architecture. So that's why in the last section now we'll discuss about some of the hardware platforms that will help you to design your own IoT structure, or we'll also discuss some of the different things, or you can say the characteristics and some of the protocols that you have to be assume or consider whenever we select any IoT hardware platforms. As I have seen, there are some of very good experts are already available in our attendees. Personally, some of the experts I know, so they are also working with this IoT field, and they are already work with such type of different IoT hardware platforms. So whenever if you have any suggestions, you can write in your chat box, so that will also help the participants. So this is what my today's contents or the agenda. That I will first go through a physical IoT architecture. Then I will share you how this IoT nodes and gateway market is in the global or worldwide. Then I will show you how the IoT hardware platform selection procedure is there or the protocol is there. Then while selecting any IoT hardware platform, what are the different IoT hardware characteristics that we have to consider. Then I will do some of the technical specification comparisons. To do this technical specification comparison, I will compare two types of boards, one microcontroller development boards and another the single board mini computers. Then we'll touch to the another IoT platform that we call as a wearable hardwares. Then we'll see what are the different wearable device characteristics are there. And finally, I will demonstrate or will show you two latest IoT, or you can say the wearable hardware platforms, RSL10 sensor development kit and the ROG6 IoT prototyping and development platform. Okay, so this is what the physical IoT architecture we have, and already from Mr. Santosh Shyamkrish from the CDAC has given this idea that we have the one thing is there that we call as a hardware node, or we can call it as a sensor node, and it consists of different sensors. Sometimes it may also consist of actuators. It has some of the communication protocols or technologies which are going to connect with the different gateways which are there in your field through any one of the communication technology or the protocol. These things have some of the characteristics, just like it has a charging units, it has some of the hardware communication protocol just like I2C, then SPI or UART. Then it is to be considered that these nodes or sensor nodes should run with battery, so that it can be what can say deploy at different locations or in the configuration of wireless sensor nodes. Then we have gateways are there. These are the what can say the collection spot or the node which collects the data from different sensor nodes and sends it to the sensors through the internet. So it is expected that either the gateway should be connected to your internet, or the thing should connect directly to the internet through any one of the communication technology. So most of the time we follow that all your device levels, that is the sensor nodes, should get connected with the gateways, and this gateway has to either process the data, store the data, and then it has to send that data to the servers. So in case of our servers, we may have the clouds or we may have a physical servers. So from your things to the server, we have a network level is there, and most of the time through this network level, we do not perform any type of operations. But at the device level, we try to design our own sensor node. We connect some of the sensors, we connect some actuators if needed. Then we generally try to have some communication technology over that sensor node, and then this sensor node try to send whatever the data is there through to the gateway. Sometimes it may be possible that your thing or the sensor node may do some local level of processing. Just like suppose we have a temperature sensor is there. What happens now? Most of the times, your sensor, temperature sensor gives you the reading in the form of millivolts. And what actually we need to do, whatever the millivolts that we are receiving from your temperature sensor has to be converted into a centigrade. So this is what we do at the local level. So your sensor node, or you can call it a IoT node, perform this local level of programming or local level of processing and sends that data to the gateway. And what happens now? This gateway collects multiple data from these multiple units of your sensors, and there may be possibility that your gateway will receive number of data or lots of data, correct? And due to this, the gateway has a very good capability of data processing, and it should have a good data storage. Also, sometimes we can add more complex algorithms in the gateways so that it can predict which data has to be kept and which data has to be retired, so that only the data which is required for the further processing that we send to the servers. So we can say that sometimes the gateways also do some filtering techniques through some of the complex machine learning or some of the AI algorithms. Fine. Now in the half of this circuit, will see that there is some of the hardware is there, that is a XM1000. It consists of two sensors, one is the temperature and one is the accelerometer, and along with that it consists of 2.4 gigahertz RF system. It is a USB based node which directly connects with either USB or with the batteries. Now we will see that these nodes are connected in either star or in a mesh, and they are connected with the gateway. So there is one gateway assigned here, and this gateway can help us to collect all the data from this IoT nodes. And this gateway then going to send all this data to your servers. So there may be a possibility that this gateway will have to either process it, or it has to just collect the data and send it to servers. So in that case, if you are sending all the data to your servers, then there may be possibility all your computation, analytics, and then decision making you are doing at server level. Fine. Okay, so this is what about our physical IoT architecture is. So what is the main importance is there? Towards the server side, generally we don't think about, because just like in previous some of the examples we have seen that there are some of the clouds we are used in hands-on session, and also we have seen some of the clouds available to work with, just like Google Cloud is there, and we have IBM Watson is there, then we have AWS is there, Microsoft Azure is there. So we have a number of clouds are available, even whatever our physical own servers are there. So generally we don't think much more about the servers. We only think about that your server should provide us some of the application, that is the APIs, correct? And this API should our gateway support, correct? And so due to this, as a designer, we most of the times think about the sensor nodes and the gateways. There may be possibility sometimes you convert this sensor node into the gateway. So it means that the sensor node itself acts as a gateway also. So that depends on our application. But when we have a star or field type of work is just like the agriculture. So most of the time we have nodes are there which are deployed at the different levels. Just like we have seen one of the example of Jain irrigation at the Ramthal village. they have deployed the different sensors at particular levels for the water management, and they have the gateways which are collecting the information from particular region or the field, and then these gateways are sending complete data to their centralized servers, and they have kept both the things that at the gateway level they have also that they are calling as a local level of data processing, and also at the central level, that is a cloud level, they are also doing their own process. So it depends on the type of application what we are doing. So now as a designer or as academicians, generally we try to focus on the sensor nodes, and the another is the uh, gateways. So let me try to see what is this IoT node and gateway market is there in the worldwide. So recently, in 2020 June, the markets research report, you will see it is freely available. It is available on their website. It says that the market is expected to register a shipment of 17.18 billion units by 2023, growing at a CAGR of 30.9% between 2017 and 2023. See, it is tremendous increase in IoT nodes and gateway in the hardware market, and that is tremendously increasing Asia Pacific region, and that is what the India, China, and some of the East Asian companies are there, which is contributing more than 9.2% CAGR. So you see that by 2020, the total business of our IoT nodes and gateways will be around 387.1 billion will be there. But now, in next 5 to 6 years, it is going to be double. So we have a very good opportunity to work in the area of IoT node and gateway. As we see, that the integration of the connectivity capabilities in an increasing number of devices is the major factor driving the IoT node and gateway market, because we see that even the connectivity nowadays we are getting village to village. Even 5 days, sorry, 5 years before we have not think about that we'll get the internet connectivity of so cheap. But now in the villages, even there is a most of the part of our country is also covered with the internet. Though there are some of the parts still do not have the internet, but most of the part of our country has covered with the 2G, 3G, and even with the 4G connectivity. And due to this, there is an opportunity for most of the people to have the deployment of the IoT architecture, IoT infrastructure. Then, as in the previous session, we have seen that the present government has the different significant funding for the IoT, then AI. So for the R&D related activities in the IoT, we have a very good funding is coming from the government to have your own development of products or to develop some of the startups. So that is also one of the driving factor of IoT nodes and gateways in the market. As you can see, the Asia Pacific region is expected to grow at an highest CAGR of 9.2%. So, which is the highest. The worldwide, it is in the year of 2020, it was only 6.2 is there, but in the Asia Pacific region, it is 9.2, and in India, it is almost, I think, 8.8 is there. So we have a good opportunity is there. Obviously, there are some of the challenges are there. As our previous experts have already told, just like the Dr. Satish Sir from the City Planning told about what are the different challenges are there to implement the IoT infrastructure for the agriculture. Then also the Mr. Abhijit Joshi from the Jain Irrigation given up some of the challenges they have faced during the implementation of the IoT infrastructure when they deploy their water management project. So these are the some of the challenges are there, but still we have a good opportunities there. Also, you'll see as we have internet across the commercial and residential places is is also helping to improve the IT infrastructure in most of the part of our country. Even almost all taluka places and the district places are covered with the internet and different device connectivity, and that is what helping us or giving us the chance to deploy our IoT infrastructure. So when we think about, okay, there is a yeah, IoT node and gateway market is growing up. So obviously the people like us, the researchers has a opportunity to work there. But what are the major factors are there which is driving it? That is the development of internet connectivity, then use of wireless sensors and its networks, then increased IP address, that is due to the IPv6. Now we have a tremendous IP address space is there, and also it has a better security solutions coming up nowadays. Then we have a, you'll see that from the industries just like Intel, Texas Instruments, on semiconductor, ST Microelectronics, and there are then analog devices, and the names are few, but they are generating or they are developing the application specific microcontroller units, and these microcontroller units are so flexible that you can develop them on a system on chips design. So due to this uh, we don't need to even integrate chips and memories together. We are getting everything on boards. Just like we have a ESP32 that you already know that it comes with everything on a single board. It has its CPU, it has its memory, it has its crystal inside it. So everything is there. Only just connect power to it and it works. It starts working. So that is what the flexibility uh, the manufacturers giving us. And then the growing market of connectivity devices. So as we have the at even villages and at remote places, we are getting the base stations of the 2G, 3G, and 4G connectivity. So that is also helping us to drive our IoT node and gateway market. Only the concern is there that security and privacy of user data, which is restraining for the IoT node and gateway market, because there are still research is going on from the some of the leading manufacturers for microcontroller units, and also from the cloud development uh, developers, that there is some of the flaws in their security and privacy issues, that is collecting your user data, and that may be possible that uh, the data loss or theft may occur. And so, but still there is a scope for us. So if you add more and more security related encryption algorithms in our microcontrollers, and in the communication between our gateways and clouds, then possibility we have a more IoT infrastructure will coming up. Okay, so when we have this IoT node and gateway market growth is there, there are two things. There are many devices are growing up. Out of this, memory devices are fastest growing hardware segment is there. So because whenever we think about any IoT device, we always think about the memory, and this is one of the fastest devices which are growing. So you'll see that even the smallest chips that are coming on your IoT nodes are coming with a large amount of memories. Even at local edge, that or at local nodes, we can perform too much complex algorithms. Even we see that from the Espressif or from the on semiconductor or from ST Microelectronics, they are giving us so uh, fast or IoT devices along with the memory storage, that even most of the complex processing that we were doing at gateways in the last 5 years, that now we can do at our sensor node itself. So that is what the uh, change occurring in the market. As we know, these memory devices are divided in two types. That is the on-chip memory and another is the off-chip memory. And whenever we think about the on-chip memory, just like the SRAM, cache, and eMMC is there. So basically, most of the system on chip microcontrollers or sensor nodes are there, they always come up with the on-chip memory. And the the advantage of this on-chip memory is that uh, they offers very high speed performance with the reduced power consumption, and due to this the battery operations, then uh, the power management at this sensor nodes is applicable, or it is capable, and we can do that at the sensor node itself. And due to this the battery operated sensor nodes can last for longer time. This is the one of the reason for battery operated devices. The another type of memory that we have is the on chip memory, and most of the times it is external to the memory, and this is not the part of your system on chip. Most of the time this DRAM, EEPROM, and the memory cards are the types of external memory. So just like we know about the Raspberry Pi, it comes with the external uh, memory card slot where we can keep our memory card, and it gives you a large amount of memory to store the data and to have the processing capability. The only the thing is that they are slower than the on-chip memories, but they are very less expensive than the SRAMs, and that's why the designers has to think about whether you have to go for the on-chip memory or the off-chip memory. Then the consumer segment, which is growing in this IoT node and gateway market, is the wearable devices, which is growing very fastly. We see that even nowadays, each single person has almost 8 to 9 devices in hand. Means we have smart watches are there, we have glasses are there, then we have mobiles are there, then we have some of the headphones are there. So we lots of devices are which a single person is handling. So that is what the wearable devices coming up. So uh, these are even we are using for even activity monitors, then the body worn cameras. We can click the photos from your wearable device, and we can directly send the alarms to your family members. So that is what the few applications we have with the wearable devices. These devices offer a wide range of functionalities, just like from health monitoring, tagging, location finding, alarming, and even advanced smart features similar to smartphones. Why this is possible? Because ultra low power controllers and the connectivity devices, then the miniaturization of the chips or the ICs. So it is possible to have wearable devices coming up within a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter uh, size, and then different power saving and harvesting techniques uh, coming up to boost the battery operated wearable devices uses. We have this IoT hardware platform selection is there. So when we think about any IoT hardware platform selection, so always we have to think about two things. One is the IoT platform for node, and then IoT platform for gateway. That is what actually we have to think about, because as I have given you that every IoT infrastructure has the IoT nodes and the IoT gateways. Just like in this image, you see that there is a Arduino board which is connected with one of the connectivity, that is a Zigbee, and it has the sensors. So it means that whatever the sensor node we have, it should connect with some of the sensors, and it should have a one connectivity device. You see that now in this example, this Raspberry Pi is acting as an IoT gateway, which has the so already it has a connectivity of Bluetooth and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. But as in this example, the Arduino or the sensor node is connected with the Zigbee. So a Zigbee receiver or the trans receiver is connected with the your Raspberry Pi. So what this Raspberry Pi is doing, it is collecting all the data coming from the sensor node. So actually Arduino is collecting all this data, that is your humidity, temperature, whatever the data is there, that is collecting it, and it is sending through this connectivity to the our Raspberry Pi. And what are the complex or what are the processing that you would like to do at the IoT gateway, that we have to process it, and then we have to send it to the cloud, or we can send it to the local database or in the memory which is available in Raspberry Pi. So once the data goes to the cloud, now it is up to us to come up with the mobile, some of the mobile applications or the uh, web web-based application to retrieve this information. So this is what the flow is there, and that we do for most of the IoT infrastructure. Now, so let me see, whenever we try to select this IoT nodes and gateway, what are the different uh, protocols that we have to follow. So whenever we select any hardware or software components for any particular IoT application, there is a one particular protocol that you have to follow. And once you follow this protocol, then finally we come up with some of the hardwares required for your IoT nodes and gateways. So that will give you the good processing capability, that will give you the good connectivity for your application, and that will give you the good processing capability. So what are this design protocol that we have to follow? So we have to go for the specification of your development. Then we have to design the concept of our application. Then what the next important parameter that comes is the prototyping and testing. And here actually most of the researchers, even at the research labs, even either at the CDAX or even the CIRI or even wherever you go, they do this prototyping and testing initially before the rollout their hardware and software infrastructure or the final product. And when they go for the prototyping, so we have two options. Either we have to select the commercially available off the shelf devices, or you have to use the customized design devices. And it is obviously, as a researchers, to have directly start with the customized design devices, because it takes a lot of time to design your own IoT node or gateway, and then you have to test it. But before moving to the your customized design, what is the another important thing that we can do? We can collect or we can work with the off-the-shelf devices. And what is this off-the-shelf devices are there? Just like the Arduinos and Raspberry Pis are there, that help us to expedite our design and allow a rapid prototyping without involving the customization. So thus expediting the time required to implement our IoT configuration. That is what we have to decide. So whenever we go for the prototyping and testing, always think about the off-the-shelf devices. Oh yes, if you have expertise available with you to design your own customized sensor nodes and gateways, obviously then you have to go with your own customized solution. But as we are working in this field from last 5 years, and we are also work with the different industries, with the Tata, then we have worked with the some L&Ts, Pearl Automation, some of the vendors of these industries. And what we generally doing, always we are prototyping our application, any IoT application, and then we test it in the field itself, and then we go for the customized design our own sensor nodes and application. So it is up to you whether you would like to go to the customized devices or have to go with the off the shelf. My suggestion is there how to go with off the shelf. The choice is with the researchers to go with any of the platforms. So let me think about what are the characteristics that we have to think, so that this characteristic will help us to select a proper sensor node or the gateway. Because if you do not have any characteristics of your sensor node, then obviously we can't compare whenever we have any off-the-shelf commercially marketed sensor node is available in the market. So we can't compare whether which platform you have to select, because either as a student, whether it is a undergraduate students or postgraduate students, always the question comes, which platform you have to select for your IoT application development. So you should come up with some of the characteristics. And when we have this characteristic, we can easily compare these characteristics with the different platforms. And when we compare these different platforms, then we come to know that yes, we need this type of characteristics, and one of these platform fits into this characteristic, and that you can select for your application. So the IoT devices that provide a basic comparison when we select the hardware and software configuration, when we have a new network or development, or when we develop or expand the existing IoT infrastructure is there. So what are these characteristics are there? That is the data acquisition and control, then data processing and storage, another the connectivity, and then next power management. So either it is your sensor node is there, or the IoT node is there, or the gateway is there. We think about these characteristics. So let me elaborate each and every characteristics. What are the parameters inside this each and every characteristic we have to think about, so that it will help you to bifurcate the different IoT hardware platforms. So we know already. I do not want to uh, define the data acquisition or the control. Uh, So what we have is there. So we know that data acquisition is it gathers the any analog information or the sensor information, and it includes the signal conditioning along with the A to D converters, so that the data can be processed and analyzed. So we think about that whatever the sensor node that we are selecting, or the IoT node, it must have onboard data acquisition, so that it reduces the sensor control integration. Otherwise, what will happen that if you do not have a sensor, if you do not have some of the sensors available on your uh, onboard, then we have to integrate our own sensors with the platform, and then you have to test. If you have some of the sensors available on our data, our microcontroller or the IoT platform, then it is easier for the designer or the researcher to test it first on the sensors available on it. Then we can connect the external sensors, and when we connect the external sensors, then it should support some of the industry standard, just like the 4 to 20 milliampere sensor input for the sensing purpose. Because whatever the your IoT sensor node is there, it should be capable of to get the input from this industry standard sensors. Otherwise, what will happen if you select any IoT hardware platform which is not supporting any industry standard, then it is difficult for you also to integrate it. And what you have to do then, from your sensor to your sensor node, again any data acquisition unit that you have to have. So it increases the hardware hardware structure or hardwares in your infrastructure, and also it increases the uh, some of the faults in your system. Then, as we know, there are many sensors coming nowadays coming up with all these data acquisition and then A to D conversion in their own uh, platform. So due to this, they provide their data in digital form itself, and they always support most of the hardware protocols, just like I2C, SPI, UART, CAN is there. Even in the automobile, we have a CAN and I2C mostly supported. So what is our requirement is there? Whatever your sensor node or IoT node is there, if you have selected a particular sensors that you are going to connect with your sensor node, then as a designer, you have to select a sensor node or the IoT node in a such a way that it should have to support the hardware protocols, so that easily you can integrate your sensor. Then the control helps us to automate the external devices or actuators, so that the decisions or actions get fulfilled. So sometimes uh, uh, whatever your local sensor node is there, it is doing some of its decisions at the edge levels, just like at the time of session from the Mr. Abhijit Joshi, they have given us the canopy, one of their sensor node, and this told us that their canopy sensor node is doing some of the local action itself. Just like if they do not have any connectivity between their gateway or from the cloud, or they are not getting any information from the servers at the local site. So what they added some of the local decisions, and these local decisions are incorporated by your sensor nodes, and this sensor node has to do this decisions at the local level. And so due to this, the if you would like to control something at the sensor node or the IoT node, then it should either support some of the digital outputs, or also it has to support the PWM based output, so that easily we can control some of the actuators. So that is what we should think about whenever we think of IoT node or the IoT gateway. Then when we come to the data processing or the storage, so every IoT devices require a specific data processing and IoT capability, and this helps achieve data aggregation, transmission, and analysis. You know that these IoT devices are going to process your data directly, or it may transmit the data to other devices, just like our gateway devices or the physical servers or the clouds, for further aggregation and data analysis. So it is your IoT application that you have to decide whether you are going to process your data at the edges, or whether simply you would like to just collect the data and would like to send it to the gateway. So if you are processing your data at the node level, then you should have some data processing capability. Otherwise, if you are just transmitting the data, then we think about the data processing and storage at the gateway level. So we have two types of processing is there. One is the edge analytics, or the basic data processing is there. So it is your choice, or the researcher's choice is there, whether we have to go for the edge analytics or whether we have to go for the basic data processing. And most of the thing that we do is the basic data processing. Just like in the last hands-on session, Dr. Satyam Srivastava given us one of the example about their application with the hardware, and they have given us the hardware architecture. Just like some of the some of the sensors were there, and that sensors sending data to their microcontroller unit, and that microcontroller unit just collecting the complete data and sending it to their Firebase cloud. Okay, so basically what actually they are doing, they are just collecting the data. Sometimes they are validating it whether the data is correct or not, and then directly sending it to the cloud. And whatever the processing is there, all this processing either they are doing at their app level. So that is what the basic data processing is there. But nowadays people are so capable that they add the machine learning in your IoT nodes, and there is a new field coming up that is called as the edge analytics. So machine learning or AI feeding in your IoT nodes, giving us a rise to the edge analytics. So due to this, the processing capability at the edges of the nodes increases, and so we should add more memory, more processing CPU units, and more complex algorithms at the edge levels, so that we get the complex processing at the edges. Sorry. So what is the advantage is there for the edge analytics, that it processes the data at the edges and it aggregates and filters it. So with the only most salient data gets sent to your cloud. So due to this, what is the advantage is there? Sometimes we know that whatever the licensed clouds are there, they are very costly, and they charge you depending on your how much data you are going to store there. And obviously, if at the edges or at the IoT nodes or at your gateways, if you are aggregating, or if you are filtering some of the data and you are sending which is important for you to your cloud, then obviously this is going to help you to reduce the data at the clouds, and also whatever the analytics that we do at the clouds, that becomes very fast, and the costing required to keep our data on a clouds also reduces. So generally, the devices performing the edge analytics require substantially more processing capabilities. So I think we already discussed about this. Okay, then next we'll come to the connectivity. So this is the third parameter of that when we think about any IoT platform. So the connectivity is required when the devices or IoT nodes, when either they connect locally to the gateways or when they directly connect with the globally through the internet. So either your gateways or sensor nodes may have both the capabilities. They can connect locally to gateways or they directly connect with the globally through Wi-Fi or through the some of the 2G, 3G, 4G platforms. We have already come up across different wireless connectivity platforms or wireless technologies in the lectures of Mr. Santosh Shyam Kosi and from the Professor Vivek Ratnaparke, and we have seen all these technologies, and they have also given the detailed comparison of these connectivities for the IoT infrastructure. Now, it is your choice. So I'll show you how this application. So in also in the lecture of in the session of Professor Vivek Ratnaparke, they have given us what type of technology that you have to select for your particular IoT application. Then we have different wire communications are there, just like uh, Ethernet is there, then RS485 is there, UART is there, CAN is there. So these are also some of the wired communications are there, which also feasible in your IoT applications. So it is not necessary that always you have to go for some of the wireless connectivity. It may be possible that you may go with some of the wired communication, and that device or your gateway may be connected with the internet. So it is not necessary that always whenever you think about the IoT, now let's select any wireless connectivity. It is not at all necessary. So if your application is gives you the feasibility, then a possibility go with the wired connection because it gives you more speed. Okay, and nowadays we will see that even a power over Ethernet is there that is helping the devices to power from the Ethernets. So we don't need a external power to give the external power to these devices. So with the Ethernet itself, we can supply the power. So this is also helping us to through wired communication, we can have the connectivity as well as we have a power. So just like our Raspberry Pi nowadays are providing power over Ethernet, it also provides the gigabit Ethernet. So it is our choice whether it is feasible to go with this or not. If your application gives you the feasibility that it is possible to go with the wired communication, I suggest to go with the wired communication. Okay, and if just like the application that we have in the agriculture where the nodes are at particular distance, then obviously we have to go with the wireless connectivity. But just like the smart buildings are there, then some of the industrial control applications are there, then there is a we have a space is there and possibility we should go with the wired communication. Then next it comes with the power management. This is a very critical factor for every portable and wearable IoT devices because every IoT node and gateway depends on the power. So whether it is the wireless power source, whether it is batteries or the solar power. So depending on your IoT application and the requirement of the sensors connected with your IoT node or the IoT gateways, we should put our all microcontrollers into the sleep mode or into the low power mode periodically to conserve the power. So most of the microcontrollers nowadays uh, having this capability, that is the sleep mode and low power modes. Even nowadays, most of the IoT controllers coming up with ultra power sleep modes. Even they are coming with the idle mode. And so these are the different modes that we can select to reduce the power. Just like if you take the example of Raspberry Pi 4, when it runs at the typical uses, it consumes more than 700 to 1000 milliamps of current. Means 1 ampere of current it just uses whenever it is in a working condition. That's why you will see that whenever you use the Raspberry Pi, they suggest that you should use at least 2.5 amps to 3 amps of adapter to run the Raspberry Pi 4. And now whenever we try to connect the different peripherals, just like the camera modules, now it start consuming more than 250 milliamps. And apart from this, when we connect the sensors and some of the actuators, just like LEDs and other things, now maximum up to the around 15 milliamps of current they start consuming. So normally when we have any Raspberry Pi based application is there, it consumes almost 1.5 amperes of current. So with the 3.3 with the 5 volt of 3.3 volt and 5 volt inputs, so it consumes almost of 10 to 12 watts of power in a 1 hour. So that is what lots of power your Raspberry Pi is consuming. So when we think about some of the wearable devices or some of the battery operated devices, so obviously you are not going to think about the Raspberry Pi. Yeah, then again the question comes, so whether you should not go with the Raspberry Pi for the battery operated devices. No, it is not necessary. You should go, but when we have lots of processing capabilities needed, just like we have a camera, we need lots of sensors are there, we have lots of processing is there, machine learning is there, we have added some of the AI is there, and so many things we are doing at the gateway level. So obviously you should go with the Raspberry Pi. Obviously you have to think about then power. So periodically a large amount of battery will need to run your Raspberry Pi, and periodically you have to charge it or you have to replace it. So let me think about the technical specification comparisons. So while comparing, so what are the characteristics that we have taken up? So let me try to compare some of the IoT nodes and IoT gateways. So I have selected some of the known or some of the unknown IoT platforms to compare here, so that we'll get a better idea how whatever the design characteristics that I have suggested can be used for the comparison of the IoT nodes and the gateways. Now I have divided my comparison in two types, one in a microcontroller development boards and the other in single board mini computers. When we think about the microcontroller development boards, so these are simple the PCBs having the additional circuitry to support the microcontroller to make it more convenient to prototype with and program the chip. So just like our Arduino is there, so it has a Atmega 32 is controller is there, but along with some of the programming unit, then driver units, then power circuitry is there. That's just like the LDOs are there, and due to the addition of this additional circuitry, our Arduino is capable of prototype some of the IoT application. Along with we can able to program the chip from your from your uh, from your personal computers or from your Raspberry Pi. Then we have single board mini computers are there. These are the step up from the microcontrollers, and they allow you to attach peripheral devices like just like the keyboards, mice, then screen, and they are also offering more memory and processing power. So now it depends on you whether you have to go for the microcontroller development boards or you have to go for the single board mini computers for your IoT nodes or the IoT gateways. Okay, so this is the first comparison here. That is a technical specification comparison for IoT UNO, then particle electron and the ASP8266 node MCU. Now whatever the characteristics that I have suggested, just like data processing and control, data acquisition and control, then data processing and storage, connectivity, and the power. So what are the parameters or that we are suggesting in our IoT characteristics? With this, I have compared this all three units. Remember that I have selected all these three units having the different platforms so that we can easily compare and we can select a particular platform for your IoT application. Now, when we think about this, all three platforms, we see here the Arduino, comes with these 6 analog inputs and 14 digital. Out of these, 6 are capable of the PWM. Now, if you think about the particle electron, it comes with the more number of analog inputs, just like 12 analog inputs, and it has also 2 analog output is there, which are directly support the DAC support, which is not available in the Arduino. Then it has 30 digital pins. So lots of digital pins are available with your particle electron. Out of this, it has a 13 PWMs outputs are there. So lots of GPIO pins are there with the particle electrons than your Arduino. Then from the expressive system, that is your node MCU, it has a 12 digital pins and it has only one analog pin is there. Out of these 12 digital pins, almost 10 pin are supports to the PWM. So means every pin can convert it into a PWM pin. So that is what the facility is there. Internal multiplexing is available in the node MCUs. Due to this, any pin can be converted into a analog, into a PWM, or into a digital, just like the platform ESP32. So actually ESP 8266 do not have the capability to convert the each pin into a analog, but ESP32 has its own this capability. Now when we think about the logic levels, Arduino comes with the 5 volt, particle electron 3.3 volt, and expressive system comes with the 3.0 volt. Now let me try to compare the data processing and storage capability of these three platforms. We see what is the processor we have with the Arduino. It is a Atmega 328, which runs at 16 kilowatts only. Then the particle electrons, which comes with a very high-end ARM Cortex controller, STM32, and which runs at 120 megahertz. A very fast speed is there. Look at the size and what is the speed is there with this controller. The ESP8266 comes with the 32-bit Tensilica controller and it runs at 80 megahertz. Then the memory associated with your Arduino is having a 32-bit kilobytes of flash and 1 kilobytes of only EEPROM is there. Whereas when we think about the particle electron, it comes with the 1 MB of flash and 128 KB of RAM. Whereas the 8266 comes with the 1 MB of flash is there. Now we'll think about the connectivity. So obviously, whenever we think about the IoT nodes, we have to think about the connectivity. As you see that nowadays in most of the colleges and institutes, you see the IoT using Arduino Uno. This is what the what can say the workshop type things are coming up. But what is the drawback is there that Arduino Uno does not come up with any type of connectivity. But the subsequent Arduinos which are available on their websites, just like Arduino MKR, now they are going to support the different Bluetooth and Wi-Fi technologies or the connectivity, and that you can now use for your IoT application. But as a Arduino, we don't have any connectivity. But just like in our hands-on session on the third day, we have connected the ESP8266 small module with the Arduino, and that gives the capability to our Arduino to have a Wi-Fi connectivity. And due to this, now Arduino Uno becomes the IoT device. Whereas when we think about the particle electrons, what it has, it has the integrated cellular model, that is a 2G and 3G. So it means that this particular electron itself can act as a gateway. So we don't need extra gateway for such type of devices. It has a SIM slot at the behind, so you can deploy your SIM in it, and it becomes a cellular gateway. So due to this particular electron directly connect with your uh, servers or the clouds. But the drawback is that we do not have a local connection. It means that if you have your local gateway, then obviously we are not able to send the data at the local. So complete processing you have to do at the sensor level itself. Whereas if you consider the node MCU, it has an integrated Wi-Fi. So it gives you the capability of the connecting these devices, that is the ESP8266, in the Wi-Fi connections. And so now we have to think about the gateway. So here, either whether the Arduino Uno is there or whether the node MCU is there, then we have to think about the gateways. And so whatever the data we have, that we have to send it to a gateway where you have to process it, or you have to just directly send data to the servers or the cloud. Now let me think about the power. The Arduino Uno runs with the power of around 5 milliamps from the USB. So it consumes around 0.5 watts of power whenever it works, and whenever you connect the different sensors, and it increases to more than 1 watt. Whereas the particle electron needs more power, and it consumes 1 amperes. Due to the integrated cellular modems in it, normal uses, it consumes almost 1 ampere of current. And whenever the 2G or 3G capability is running on, at that time it consumes more power then. Whereas if you consider the node MCU, it consumes less current, around 3 milliamps of current, even though there is a Wi-Fi is there. Even if you run the Wi-Fi, it goes up to 500 milliamps of current. So now this is what you have to think about. Whether you have to go with the Arduino Uno by the addition of external Wi-Fi or any connectivity, or whether you have to go with the direct particle electron. But in case of this, you have to support more power. Or either you have to go with the node MCU, which has a less power, but it supports only Wi-Fi, and it lacks with the GPIO. So now it is your choice and what your IoT application is suggesting you. So with these characteristics, first you have to find out what are the sensors you are going to connect, how many GPIO you are going to need, how many protocols that is going to you need, which type of connectivity that you need, whether there is a communication between your sensors to gateways there, or whether you would like to upload your data directly from your sensor node to servers, whether you have to go with some battery operated technology or the IoT nodes, or whether you have to supply a power from the wall power. So that is what you have to think about. And once you come up with your final characteristics, then such type of comparison you have to do with your IoT devices. And out of this, now whichever is feasible, that you have to select. Remember that it is not at all possible that a particular device is going to fit in your application. So there is a trade-off that you have to decide, whether you have to go with all the GPIO and sensors and with the processing power, and obviously then you have to not think about the power. You have to provide the power, correct? Just like the particle electron is there. But if you go with just like the node MCU, it is consuming less power as the Wi-Fi capability, but then you have to trade off here that it is giving you less number of GPIOs. So it is your choice, and you have to keep a trade-off between the data acquisition, connectivity, and the power. So you have to come up with one trade-off, and then that you have to suggest to your team or your students to select a particular platform for your IoT application. Next, we'll go to the some of the mini computers comparison. Most of the times we use these mini computers or the single board computers for the purpose of your gateway application. These devices are also capable of to make themselves as a nodes as well as the gateway. So the advantage is that either we can make these devices as a gateway, or another advantage is that we can make them as a sensor nodes, along with they can also be converted into a gateway. So both the opportunity is there with these mini computers. Only the drawback is that they need a more power. But apart from the power, they provide lots of processing capability, lots of connectivity, and so many things, and that gives us the overhand on the microcontroller development boards. Let me try to compare here. So also while selecting this uh, mini computers, so we should do some comparison with the characteristic that we have gone through. So just like data acquisition, data processing, connectivity, and then the power. So you see in the data acquisition, the Raspberry Pi supports the 40 pin IO pins. Out of these 29 are the digital pins, whereas some of the other pins are the ground and VCC. Whereas if you see the BeagleBone supports 65 digital pins, along with it supports 8 PWM. Also it supports 7 analog pins. Whereas if you see the Raspberry Pi and called your Dragon board does not support any analog inputs. That is what the BeagleBone has the advantage. Then with the logic levels, if you see, Raspberry Pi supports the 3.3 volt, BeagleBone supports the more power voltage levels, whereas the Dragon board supports only 1.8 volts. You see, that's why it has a very low power capability. Fine. Then the processing capability with this, you see, the Raspberry Pi 4 comes with the ARM Cortex A72, so very good processing capability is there with the Raspberry Pi. Whereas the BeagleBone, we do not have a such type of uh, capability than your ARM Cortex A72, but still it supports ARM Cortex A8 capability. Then a Qualcomm Dragon board, it supports uh, ARM Cortex A53. The speed at which your Raspberry Pi is working, so it is working at 1.5 gigahertz, whereas your BeagleBone works at less speed, that is 1 gigahertz, and Dragon board runs at 1.2 gigahertz. So if you think about the speed, then you have to go with the Raspberry Pi. So now that is what, if you have a more processing is there and we need a more speed, then obviously we have to go with the Raspberry Pi, or we have to keep a trade-off between the speed here. So we can go with either Raspberry Pi 4, or we can go with the Qualcomm's Dragon board 410. Then the memory supported, it supports up to 4, it has a 4 GB onboard memories, and external memory it supports, nowadays it supports 256 GB of external memory. And in the same way, the BeagleBone comes with the 512 of RAM, and it has a 4 GB of flash. So, and we can have external SD cards that we can connect, and we can go up to 128 GB of SD cards memory with the BeagleBone. And along with the Qualcomm, the Dragon board comes with the 1 GB of variant, and it has 8. So only see, it has a 8 GB of flash is there. So we don't need extra flash to develop your application, because most of the application you can deploy within this 8 GB of flash. Then connectivity, your Raspberry Pi supports Wi-Fi, Ethernet, along with the Bluetooth. It also supports the power on Ethernet. Then BeagleBone Black, it supports the Ethernet, but it do not have a capability to have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, but their USB ports allows to connect the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Then Qualcomm Dragon board, it supports Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, along with it supports GPS. So that is what one of the advantage with the Dragon board is there. So if you think that with this cost, if you need a GPS, obviously you have to go with the Dragon board. But if you think that the Raspberry Pi is needed to you because you would like to use the Ethernet and you can supply more power, you can add the extra GPS board or shield with the Raspberry Pi. So obviously at that time the cost is not going to matter with your application. Then if you compare with the power, see the Raspberry Pi needs minimum 5 volt to 5 volt and 3 amps of adapter, whereas BeagleBone works with the less power, even it works at 1.2 amps to 2 amps of adapter, whereas the Dragon board runs at more power, that is 6.5 volt to 18 volt of, actually it works at the 1.8 volt of the controller or your processor, and it consumes the 2 amps of adapter. So maximum it can consume the 2 amps of power. So it is up to you now whether we have to go with the high power device just like the Raspberry Pi, or we have to go with the less power device just like the BeagleBone, or we have to go with some medium power device just like the Qualcomm Dragon board. So here actually I am not promoting any type of device here. Okay, so it is your choice whether to go with any particular type of device. So based on your application and based on this characteristic, you can select the particular device. So I hope you are now able to do the comparison of your some of the microcontroller development boards and the some of the mini computer boards. Now as I have given you about idea about the BeagleBone wearable devices, so which is what the booming platform is there nowadays. And as you can suggest, just like Dr. Satyanarayana sir has suggested, that why not we have a bees are there, and over these bees can we have some of the units on these bees, and they will go into your farm and they will collect the information from the plants, and directly we get the the data. So we don't need even more number of field devices, and these bees will act as our sensor nodes. So if you would like to go for such type of applications, so obviously we have to go for wearable devices. So when we think about the choosing between the microcontroller and development boards, uh, this is my suggestion that it is wrong to say which one is better, because each one board has its own benefits and the fundamental differences. Both boards, that is the mini computers or the development boards, are great for prototyping. Microcontroller development boards are easier to set up and go, while the single board mini computers provides the more onboard features. So when we would like to select the development board or mini computer, so as per my suggestions, you have to think about this uh, design decisions. Just like determine the type and the number of peripherals, sensors, and the output connected component that you need to connect with your sensor node or the gateway first, and then decide about the any design circuitry whether it is needed to your device or not. Then select a particular microcontroller or single board device so that you can coordinate the readings from and controlling the peripheral components. Then select a particular data communication protocols, just like the I2C, UART, or CAN, whether it is supported by your development board or mini computer is there. Also, you have to think about whether the protocols supported by your sensors are available with your board or computer is there. And then think about any networking hardware and protocol that you need to use to communicate with gateways, cloud services, or the apps, and which are supported by your development boards or mini computers or not. So all these things, if you uh, think at the time of your any IoT application, then probably will get some of the decisions to select a particular development board or mini computers. So with this, now we'll move to the another platform, that is a wearable hardware platforms, and which is now a very booming technology. And you'll see that nowadays almost out of 10, 4 people have the smartwatches, and in coming 3 years this will increase to 6. So it is suggested that by the 250 out of 10, 9 people will have a wearable device. So what these wearable devices are there? These are split across various industries. Most of the uses of these wearable devices are just like the infotainment, then industrial uses, health monitoring, fitness, attention. Then we have agriculture, even applications are there, just like the cattle monitoring, the health of cattle monitoring. Then we have the tagging of the cattles. We can find where the cattles are there. Then also we can find the leaf data from, or leaf health monitoring from in the farm, then the medical data and the military. Most of the off-the-shelf hardware selection or customer design is the aspect that become deciding factor behind the success of wearable device. So it is up to you whether you are going to buy off-the-shelf hardware or you are going to design your own device for the purpose of the wearable devices. So because as wearable devices making or changing the lifestyle of the people by adding or giving the data with your hands or in your mobiles. So it is very so we have to also think about different characteristics of these wearable hardware platforms. So what are the different wearable device characteristics that we have to think about when we would like to design your wearable device? Your wearable device must suggest low power design. It must suggest energy efficient connectivity protocols. As we have a number of protocols are there, so out of this we have to suggest only, we have to think about only energy efficient connectivity protocols. Then we have to suggest the right power management or the battery operations, and then we have to suggest the human factors in engineering, just like whether there is a radiation on your body or not, whether it is going to affect your mental stability, whether it is going to uh, harm your body. So anything, such type of human factors are there that also you have to think when we think about the wearable devices. So let me think about the low power design first. So this is one of the most important factors that we would like to always consider when we have a wearable device is there, because if your wearable device consumes more power, then that wearable device either you have to charge continuously or you have to replace the batteries continuously, and that is actually uh, very troublesome for every users, and your product is not going to buy in the consumer market. Then the healthcare wearable devices, just like which takes the data from takes data just like SpO2, heart rate, or GPS tracking, which needs the more power, and so it is your device to provide some power management techniques so that the more power should get provided to these devices through your battery. Then another factor that we consider with the low power design is the chip selection. So whenever we select the chip, either you have to select the lower geometry ASICs, just like the 12 nanometer or 7 nanometer, which are ideal for the wearable devices. And almost nowadays, whichever the startup or the manufacturer are coming with the wearable device, they are always using the 12 nanometer or the 7 nanometer chips or the ASICs. And due to this technology, they are supporting very low or ultra low power sleep modes, and due to this they are consuming very less power. So that's why the batteries which are connecting with these smart watches or the wearable devices, they are lasting long for few weeks, even few months, and some of are lasting few years. So this lower geometry is going to yield high performance at the lower power consumption, and it gives you very plus point for wearable makers. Then when we think about the energy efficient connectivity protocols, so we have a very good energy protocol, energy efficient protocols are there, just like the Bluetooth, Zigbee, and Z-Wave are there. Just like the Wi-Fi, then your uh, 2G or 4G connectivity nowadays we are coming, but these are the uh, very high power consuming protocols are there, and obviously such type of protocols we are not going to use with the wearable device. So the Bluetooth is one of the most uh, developed and used protocol in the wearable devices in 2019 with the protocol of Bluetooth 4.2, that is the Bluetooth low energy connectivity. Now from the last year, now we are getting the Bluetooth 5, which has very low power, which is consuming the power in the form of milliwatts. So due to this, it gives you uh, uh, the connectivity to wearable devices with low power application. So this low power consumption enables us to reduce the size of batteries along with the size and weight of the product, and in turn it reduces the cost of your wearable devices. So there are these factors changing everything. Then the last characteristic that you have to decide when we have a wearable device is that is the right power management in it with your circuitry and the right battery that you have to select. So mostly, most of the whatever the wearable devices that are coming in the market or people are designing, either they use the lithium polymer batteries or nowadays they are going with the lithium ion rechargeable coin cells. Because lithium polymer batteries are very flexible in the sizes, they are rechargeable, they are light in weight, which is the requirement of your wearable devices. As from last 3 years, even lithium ion rechargeable batteries are coming up, so they are also in a lightweight, and due to this, that we can also add in your smart watches or the smart devices. And the advantage is that we can recharge them. So even some of the smart watches are there, they last for, if you do not use them, if you have only a normal use there, the batteries last for almost 1 month. And if you have a simple sensor nodes are there where we do not want to process anything, only we would like to collect the data, then these batteries are lasting almost few years. And particularly if you have such type of batteries, try to use the low dropout regulators, that is the LDOs, that help us to run your complete system at lower power also. And finally, the factor comes the human factor engineering. That is the, so there are different factors which is going to uh, give the hazards or cause the human radiation. So we have, what are these factors are there? So either any hazards caused by the faults in the devices. So there may be possibly that your device itself is faulty, and due to this it is generating different hazards to your human body. There may be a possibility that as you are using the different kinds of radiation connectivity technology with your wearable devices, just like the Bluetooth, Z-Wave or Zigbee, so there may be a possibility that it has a radiation, and this emitted radiation may uh, affecting the human body and different the usability. So while uh, long-term usable use of these devices, whether it is going to harm your body or not. So that is what we have to think about. So before using any type of chips or any type of connectivity devices in your wearable devices, so I suggest that we have to select the chips and batteries that follow the regulatory guidelines of a particular government, so that it will avoid any hazards or the failures. So once we are done with these characteristics, so finally, I'll give you some of the two platforms, that is the RSL 10 sensor development kit and the uh, Xenox sensor platform. So this is the RSL10 sensor platform, this one. And what is the advantages there? See, it has the industry's lowest power Bluetooth low energy. So this is a wearable device. It has a Bluetooth low energy device. It has low power smart hub, 3-axis accelerometer, 3-axis gyroscope, programmable microcontroller. So that is what the data processing capability these micro units have. It has another sensor just like the digital geomagnetic sensor, which is needed for augmented reality and the location-based services. Then it has integrated environmental sensors, which are needed for wearable and mobile application. And it has also provides the ambient light sensor, which provides the response similar to human eye. So depending on the external light or the brightness, automatically these devices, this sensor help us to automatically change the brightness of the devices. Let me show you what is the size of these devices. So the size of these devices only this one, that is the 2.5 centimeter to 2.5 centimeter of this diameter is there. So look at this size. Within this size, it provides all such capabilities. What it has the capability of system in package, which has the Bluetooth 5 certified. Along with it has all international regulations certified, CE, IC, KC, MIC, FCC. That is what I am suggesting, that if you use any type of IC chip which is already have a certified from the different wireless international regulation bodies or from the some of the governments, then obviously uh, it is easier for you to deploy your application in market. See, what I have suggested, that it should have some of the data processing and it should have some sensors. Look at so many sensors this development kit is providing you. These such boards are easily available in Indian market, and you can easily work with this. In our last IoT development program for one of the agriculture application, uh, actually before the corona, that we have deployed in Madhya Pradesh, and we have used this RSL sensor development board. So even we don't have connected any external sensor. With this sensor, we have got the cattle information uh, of that farmer to on his mobile, and all they can track their cattles. And even we have deployed some of the sensors in his farm to measure the uh, different pressure, humidity, temperature in the farm, and depending on actually they have the farmer has a small greenhouses there. In that we have deployed these two sensor development boards, and this farmer getting complete information in his mobile app. Apart from this, this sensor development boards supports the Sense and Control mobile app for cloud connectivity. So actually there is a connectivity only, the Bluetooth 5 is there. Why this Bluetooth 5 is there? I think from our connectivity characteristics you can understand. What are the different applications are there for this development is there? We can go with industrial wearables, asset monitoring, we can go with smart sensing solutions, health monitoring, then object, cattle and pets tracking, that actually we did last year. And then this is the my last two slides are there. This is a Roxix IoT prototyping and development platform we have. This is also freely available in our Indian market, and this has also many good sensor on board. The size is only almost 1.8 centimeter by 1.8 centimeter, and which we can easily fix in the such type of devices, just like the smart watches or the tags, and that you can develop your own. What is this? These are the prototyping development. Means these are not the complete products. These are the prototyping development boards. So due to this, you can make your own application by using this boards. What is the advantage of this Roxix IoT prototyping platform is that Even you can program through Android app. So they have their own Android app. You just connect your Android app, your mobile with the this device through a Bluetooth, and through this Android app you can directly program it over the wireless. Even it provides a Python computer language interface in a Android app. So through this Android CLI, you can also program it, or even it provides the Windows GUI its own, and through which it also program it. Another advantage is that it provides its own clouds where we can log our data, we can store that data, then we can monitor it, and also we can go with data analytics. So there are numerous facility this Roxy IoT prototyping platform is providing to you. So it is also certified with the Bluetooth 5, and it has a low power consumption, so long battery applications are running up on this board. So for any smart application, it has its own sensors included, just like 3-axis accelerometer, then magnetometer along with gyroscope, then barometers, and it also supports some of the bus for expansion of additional sensor. What are the both prototyping development board, as I just said, both support the extra pins where we can add our own sensors also. Obviously, we have to pick up such a sensors which are in a small size so that we can integrate them with these chips. And these are the application of this prototyping board. Just like you can go with any either prototyping application, or you can go with data analysis, machine learning, and remote monitoring, or you can go with IoT development for education purposes. So with this, I end my session. I'll take any suggestions or any queries from your participants. Yeah, if you have any suggestions, that also you can give, because we would like to convey your research also with the participants, so that we can have the exchange of information among all the participants. So it may be possible that you already did, some of the experts I personally know, and they already did some of the great work, and also you have discussed with some of the previous experts. So you can also suggest some of the characteristics that people can adopt in their research. So if you have either the queries, or if you have any suggestions that you would like to provide your own, uh, so you can raise your hand, we'll unmute you. We have seen some of the attendees. These are the good, great experts in this field. So they may have some suggestions for the participants, or even this is not. We as a experts also require some of the suggestions from you, so that we can use that in our next development of IoT architecture or IoT infrastructure. Is there any queries from the participants?
What would be the best platform for low power and long range application?
What would be the best platform for low power and long range application? That is what I said. You have to compare, and you have to make a trade-off. I'm not going, because see, whenever I say this platform you have to use, it looks like I'm advertising that platform, and obviously I'm not going to advertise a particular platform to you. Just like I have compared Arduino, particle electron, node MCU, and there are a number of this, just like USP32 is there, and there are many platforms are available, from the microchip, then from ST microelectronics, from analog devices. There are many platforms are available. Then Intel is there, Texas Instrument is there. So it is up to you. You have to make a trade-off whether this is the maximum power that you can adopt in your application, and this is what the what can I say, the range that you can select. So range, long range means what? You can select either 1 kilometer, or you can go with some in meters. You can go with up to say whether you need a 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers. Then obviously you have to go with the LoRa type of technology. But when you go for such type of LoRa type of technology, so obviously you have to consider about the power. Then so this is vary with your application, correct? So that is what you have to compare some of the platforms, and then you have to decide whether the platform is suitable for your application or not. Dr. VR Douglas, sir, can we have a separate session on MIT app? Sir, what we'll do, I'm getting many requests from the participants to develop the Android app development session. Yeah, I have connected with the Satyam Srivastava, sir, and he's agreed to have the separate sessions for the complete hands-on on the hardware development along with the MIT app inventor for the app development, along with the database management in cloud. So all he's agreed, but obviously it is not possible in this FDP. So whenever, so maybe in next month we are going to plan such type of activity, and that will provide you either in our WhatsApp, and we have your email IDs. So whatever the whenever we plan that, we'll share it with your email IDs. Sure that we'll plan, but now presently our FDP schedule is not going to allow us now more session on MIT app development, because even Atal have suggested us only 14 sessions, but still to add more hands-on session, we increased our sessions to 15 with the permission of from the AICT. Yes, beacon based devices are available, and even Bluetooth 5 have the beacon facility where a single device can connect the multiple devices, and at a time it can transfer the data or receive the data from multiple devices through what can I say, the time management, and it makes each device into a sleep mode. Just like nowadays you may know about that the TVs are coming with the Bluetooth 5, and the TVs can connect with the multiple devices, just like Bluetooth headphones. Then multiple, it can connect multiple headphones. Then it connects with Bluetooth, let's say remotes. Then it connects the Bluetooth your mice and mic, and we have cameras are there. Sorry, cameras are not there with the Bluetooth, and then we have keyboards are there and mouse are there that are coming. So all are get connected with a single TV. So what actually they do, they make a beacons, and each beacon they start getting the address from each device, and whenever uh, it gets the information from a particular beacon, then it activates that particular device and it sends the data, and then only for that particular device it starts sending the data. Once the beacon or the device starts stop the sending the any information, then the TV stop that device from sending or receiving any information. Due to this, you will see that even though the batteries in these Bluetooth remotes last almost 3 years. Even I have this Bluetooth remotes in with my TV. They are almost lasting from almost 3.5 years. Even and that are even not I have changed. So that is why, because they go in a sleep mode. Because every time we are not using that or we don't send the continuous data with the TV. Any other query from the participant? So thank you all the participants for your suggestions and queries. There may be possibility that at some point I may have maybe wrong, but as depending on your IoT application, you may select your own characteristics and you may select your own hardware and software platform. So with this, thank you all the participants. Now I'll stop this session. In next 10 minutes, sorry, we'll go with next 15 minutes. We will have a session on yoga for the stress management, and then at a 6 o'clock we'll go for the our validatory function and the test. So while this yoga session, I will share the link to your registered email ID as well as in the WhatsApp group. But whatever the stress that you got in the last 5 days, or even I have seen many people are calling me from their colleges. They are traveling from their home to their colleges. Some of are attending from their home. I have even seen that many uh, participants they are doing their work at home. They are doing their also work in the home. Okay, and they are still doing this workshop continuously. And whatever the stress is there, so I know yoga is one of the our ancient, we can say the technology, we can say a technology which help us to relieve our stress, it relieves our health. So whatever the today's speaker is there, who is a certified yoga trainer, and from last 20 years, she is helping the people to uh, help the yoga to change their lives. I hope all the people, those who are the participants here, take the benefits. I also suggested the our today's expert for this stress management to take some of the hands-on. So if you take this some of the hands-on, so hopefully whatever the stress that you got in the last 5 years will get released. So thank you all of you for. I'm now ending this session. We'll meet at 5 o'clock.